It started out as two people in their 80s simply looking to build strength so they could have quality of life for longer. But my parents' journey has captured hearts and minds all over the world.
An elderly couple say they have found a new lease of life after taking up strength training in their 80s.
With one little video that we did on their progress, now passing 7 million views on Instagram. They've been featured in the media too, but none of the fuss has fazed them. They just focus on showing up each and every Monday and Thursday to do their workout, following the instructions of their coach, Chris Reis. And they've come a long way in the last 7 months. In a short space of time, my dad Michael is moving towards exceptional levels of strength for a man of 81. And my mum Rhoda started the year with a burning hope to walk upright again after severe muscle loss in her lower back left her unable to hold it upright or walk unaided for more than 30 seconds. Today, you're going to see just how far she's progressed again since our last update. But the path of life is rarely straight, and my mum has hit a couple of bumps in the road too, which you'll also hear about in this episode. And we're also going to catch up with their coach to hear what he makes of their progress at this stage and how far he thinks they can take it. So if you're new to this series, which we've called Rebuilding Mum and Dad, then you can catch up with previous episodes through the series playlist, which you'll find linked in the description below. And in the first episode back in January, we showed my mum and dad meeting Chris online for the first time and doing their first strength training workout with him. From there, we've been sharing progress updates every couple of months. So let me quickly recap how we got here. Last year, I interviewed Chris, who is head coach with Starting Strength Gyms in Cincinnati and is also a physical therapist. And we talked about the work he was doing with elderly clients, including 98-year-old Merce Hershey, who had been able to improve her bone density in her late 90s through weight training. Inspired by this interview, I set up a barbell rack in the garage of my home. My mum and dad, who live next door, watched the interview and they were inspired to give strength training a go too. So since January, my parents have been following a strength training regimen that involves compound movements with a barbell that works multiple muscle groups at the same time. They started light and are gradually increasing the weights they work with by only around 1 kilo or 2 pounds a week, sometimes even less than that. But today, I just wanted to share with you some of the big differences between where they started and where they are now before hearing what their coach has to say. So in his first session, my dad deadlifted 30 kilos from the floor, quickly progressing to 40 kilos, around 88 pounds. But this week, he deadlifted his age in kilos. So 81 kilos, nearly 179 pounds. His coach says he's accelerating towards being able to lift 90 kilos, around 200 pounds, and that would put him in a very exceptional group for his age. Now, my dad isn't doing this for the glory. He's doing this, as is my mum, purely for the benefits it brings in terms of being able to live life without struggle and to continue the life they love for as long as possible. Gardening, cooking for the family, traveling to see their friends and relatives, keeping their home so nicely, hopping in and out of the shower and getting up from a chair easily. All things that we take for granted at a younger age, but that can get much tougher as we get older. Last time we heard how my mum is now able to stand upright long enough to wash her hair in the shower without her back hunching over or having to lean against the side of the shower for support. And my dad said he no longer feared the future because he was getting more and not less competent in everyday life through building muscle. And my dad has taken to strength training like a duck to water. And while I was initially trying to keep up with him on the weights, he has left me so far behind because he just goes from strength to strength. In January, he started squatting with 13 kilo and now he squats with 44 kilos on his back. He bench presses 39 kilos, 86 pounds, and on the overhead rack press, he's just moving on to 30 kilos. So my dad has so far powered through all the sessions, and my mum is also doing great, but there have been a couple of setbacks along the way too. So first she had a virus at the start of June that meant she missed a couple of workouts and then had to go a little lighter until she was fully recovered. And then just a few weeks after that, just as she was getting over the virus, she injured her leg on the side of a car door and the wound got infected, so she had to miss a couple of sessions while her leg healed too. So that means on some of the movements, there have just been really small increases since our last update 2 months ago. But she's still moving forward and she has come a long way since January. Back then, my mum was struggling to just squat to a bench and get back up without wearing any weight at all. She mastered squatting to the bench with 18 kilos on her back, but she now uses a box that is a few centimeters lower than the bench. It's just about 40 centimeters or 16 inches high. And Chris brought the weight on her vest back down to allow her to go to those lower depths. So she's currently squatting with 16 kilos on the vest. Some days are a struggle at these bigger weights, and you're going to hear a little bit more about that shortly. And when it comes to her deadlift, well, initially she was deadlifting from a raised height on the rack and just picking up around 11, 12 kilos, roughly 26 pounds. Now she's lifting 34 kilos or 75 pounds from the floor. So that's 6 kilos more than 2 months ago. And I can tell you that lifting 34 kilos from the floor does feel extremely heavy. On the rack press, my mum currently does 16.5 kilos, around 36 pounds. Now that's only around 1.5 kilos increase in the last couple of months, but still progress. Raising her arms above her head is a movement my mum really struggles with, and some of you might remember she could barely raise them at all with no weight back in January. So she really is doing well. And similarly, she's up by just a couple of kilos since last time on the bench press, lifting around 20 kilos, which is 44 pounds. And this is what it's all about. Not pushing her beyond her limits, but making gradual, incremental gains that she can cope with, but which are increasing her strength and endurance with every passing week. And the real test for my mum has always been how long she can stand and walk unsupported. And everyone who knows her can see the changes. In social situations, she's able to stand and talk, just leaning on her stick for much longer periods of time. In the last episode published at the beginning of June, I shared how she had gone from walking for just 30 seconds unsupported in January when they first started training to walking for 2 minutes at the end of May. Well, the other week we went back out on the path near our house to record her again, and this time she walked for 3 minutes 17 seconds before her back became sore and she found herself struggling to hold her back up again.
We're stopping?
I think that's it, yeah.
Okay.
And it's generally at that point that we hand her back her upright rollator walker, which she uses to go longer distances. And so many of you have commented on how different she appears compared with the Rhoda you saw back in January, who was looking a little frail and wobbly on her feet. Not anymore. And as you're going to hear in this check-in conversation now with their coach Chris, he believes we'll see even bigger gains by the end of the year. Good to see you again, Chris.
Yeah. How are you guys?
Very good. Very good.
I can tell you they're stronger since we last spoke together in this room.
I believe it. Yeah, heck yeah.
I have been trying to keep up with my dad on the weights, but he is surging ahead of me now. So this week, he's deadlifting his age in kilos at 81 kilos. That's
fantastic.
It's nearly 180 pounds, I think.
Uh-huh.
I mean, how typical is that for a man of 81 and to progress so quickly like that?
Well, I think it's rare among average 81-year-olds.
Yes.
Most of them just aren't doing it, right?
Yeah.
However, I think anyone who does undertake a training program like this could expect to see pretty similar results. Now, the caveat is your dad's been extremely consistent, which is the key, right? If you're missing workouts and, whether it's on purpose or not, if you're not in the gym training, you won't see the kind of progress that he has seen.
And we were intrigued to know as well where you would expect Dad to go from here. I mean, how much more room has Dad got in him, say, over the next 6 months? What are you expecting to see?
It's hard to say for sure based on so what I have seen with his, like deadlift, for example, has been a pretty obvious one. Things have moved pretty well, and now he's starting to really cruise. So I don't see an end in sight necessarily, thinking about adding 1 kilo a week to a set of 3. I think he's probably got some room to do that for quite a while. How much longer, it's hard to say. All of us have some genetic limitation to our strength, and then you've got to factor in the lifestyle considerations. The farther along you get in this process, the more difficult that next increase becomes. A lot of times your not necessarily going to add a smaller amount of weight. So we might stick with that 1 kilo increase. It's going to happen farther apart. So rather than being every week, it may eventually be every other week. And then it may become every third or fourth week. We're trying to make that next little increase. It takes a lot more stress to drive that next bump, the stronger you get. And then you, as you're administering that stress through these workouts, you need to recover from those. And so that's why things just kind of spread out. But as it looks right now, I don't see him slowing down. We're going to hopefully hit a new benchmark, a new PR, and then we're going to recycle and probably look at, again, either spreading things out and trying to increase every other week, maybe introducing a lift like a rack pull, which we've done with your mom in the past. That would be a great alternative lift on the kind of the off week for the deadlift. We might rack pull. And so that would be a way to continue to try to drive some progress and, again, spreading out when we're trying to add weight to his deadlift. And again, when you start looking at the lifestyle considerations, diet, sleep, all of those things, the law of diminishing returns starts to take effect. You know, in your dad's case, right? Is he going to encounter anything in his everyday life that's going to require him to be able to lift 180 pounds? Probably not. The lifestyle demands that are required to lift, I don't know, 100 kilos, 150 kilos, is that really going to be worth? Is the risk worth the reward for an 81-year-old? There's certainly, that's a conversation worth having at some point. And again, life usually gives us some reason to reset, deload. We get sick, we take a trip. He tweaks his back. That kind of stuff happens. That would be an opportunity for a reset. We build back up. And, none of us reach our absolute true genetic potential for those reasons. There are just unknowns that we can't plan for. But again, short answer is I think he's got some runway. I think he's going to get quite a bit stronger before this starts slowing down.
Okay, and just to help any viewers or listeners out there, when you're talking about 2s and 3s, we're talking about the number of repetitions in each set. Yeah. With each set, which you've been lowering.
Right. So, the whole program is set up to try to add weight to the bar. That is the representation of increase in strength. He's generating more force. He's picking up more weight. So a set of 3, when that becomes not possible, we just drop to 2. In order to keep adding weight to the bar. And then eventually we drop to 1s in order to keep adding weight to the bar. We take that as far as we can, and then we recycle. Usually that's a move back to maybe something like sets of 3 with a little lighter weight, and we make modifications to the program, with regard to the frequency that he's trying to add that weight to the bar.
Got it. Dad, how do you feel about that?
Well, yeah, and the thing I wonder, in doing this, every time we go to the limit when you lift it, and but we've discussed that now over the last few minutes as to what happens, and you've given a good explanation of that. But you do also say we get to a point where, is it sensible? Do you want to take it any further? What's the maintenance prospect with this type of thing? I mean,
Yeah, that's a great question. That comes up a lot. The unfortunate reality is maintenance is sort of a myth when it comes to this kind of training. Let's say you get to 100 kilograms, for example, and you're there, and you come in and do that week after week after week. It'll probably stay there for a while. At some point, you will start to slip back. And, okay, 100, man, I got 3, but boy, that was really hard today. You come in the next time, maybe you can't get 3. Maybe you get 1 or 2, and then the next time maybe you don't get any, maybe it's 1. You start to slip back a little bit, and then you get sick. Or, you take a vacation, you come back, well, now 100's not there, now you're at 90. Now you got to apply the same process to get back up to 100. And so we would encourage any trainee to always be training for progress, again, within reason, right? Training for progress, training for increased strength, and life will dictate some of those resets, those breaks, things like that. Those kinds of things are going to happen for all of us. And so when they do, we just make the appropriate reset and we work our way back up. And we're always kind of thinking and striving for more, knowing that there are going to be interruptions in our training. And that's just part of the process. And so if you get to maintenance and then you have this interruption, well, now you've slipped back quite a bit more, and you've got to just simply apply the same process to get back to where you were. So it's like, why would you ever stop that process in the first place? You're going to have breaks. You're going to have vacations. There's always going to be a reason to kind of take a step back, again, mentally, physically, recharge, regroup. We reset the weights, and then we build back up again. And so, either life is going to provide those things for you, or if you're really, really consistent, committed, again, these would be some of the athletes at the highest level. Their whole life revolves around this stuff. Even they are going to take some occasional breaks where they back off on the weights, again, mental, physical break, and then they rebuild again. And so this process of, kind of up and down is extremely common. We talked about this a little bit, I think, with your mom and her squat. She got 15 kilograms last week in the vest. This week, 16 just isn't there. And that's very typical. When you're working at the limits of your capacity, you may come in on a day when you just don't have that upper limit. You're just not feeling as strong, maybe didn't sleep as good, you didn't eat as good, maybe you've got a bug or something like that. All those kinds of things are going to affect your performance, and so you got to make modifications and adjustments. And so it gets tricky when you intentionally limit your progress with something like this idea of maintenance. You really set yourself up for quite a bit of regression just with these everyday life circumstances.
Yeah.
Okay. I understand.
Now, you mentioned mum there, and she didn't catch all of that, but he mentioned that on Monday when you were doing your squat with the 16 kilo vest, you just couldn't get back up from that lower box.
Yeah.
Whereas on Thursday, when she'd been lifting 15 kilos on the same box to the same depth, it was no problem at all. Can she just have an off day sometimes?
Absolutely.
Or what? Yeah.
Absolutely. You've gotten quite a bit stronger. She's working closer to her genetic potential at her current age. And again, you just got less margin for error and just a little bit of an off day. Again, that's why I'm always a little conservative when somebody travels, they come back from a trip. We're just a little bit vulnerable, right? So I usually back the weights up knowing that you're going to come back in and everything's going to feel just a little bit heavier. And so those days, they happen, right? So again, sometimes there's an obvious explanation, sometimes there isn't one. And it's just one of those days.
Did you have any questions you wanted to ask?
I feel, Chris, that I'm improving more on my upper back muscles than my lower back,
Yeah.
where I have my problems.
Yeah.
Is there anything I can do to kind of bring the two together, or?
Just keep training. Keep training. Your low back is very much working with all these lifts. You probably you were in a situation where you were able to see more rapid progress out of the upper back. The upper back's job is just easier. It's just not holding up as much of you. And so you're gonna get to a point where you feel some change in that area probably a little quicker. But again, when you deadlift, when you squat, you're absolutely using and training the lower back as well. And so over time, that will get better and better. Again, I think the fact, a huge part of being able to walk a longer distance is the strength in the hips and the lower back to maintain a more upright posture. But all the things that we've talked about before with regard to the deadlift, with regard to that really upright, tall finish, you're training all of the back, upper, lower. And again, it may just take a little bit more time and a little more progress with regard to weight on the bar to really feel a more significant change in the low back. I would argue that given the progress and the change with your ability to walk, the low back and the hips have absolutely gotten stronger. It just may be more obvious to you in the upper back and not as obvious in the lower back with what you're feeling.
Yeah, I think it's an expectation thing as well, because we can look at it like, oh my goodness, she's gone from walking only 30 seconds unaided to over 3 minutes unaided. But for mum, she just wants to be able to do that and not stop. We're thinking, well, this looks miraculous to us, but to her, she's keen to be able to do everything she wants to do.
Right.
What would your expectation be of her progress over the next 6 months to a year?
I think her deadlift has a lot of potential for progress. Again, that's a lot more muscle mass, a lot more of her body contributing. So I think that's got a lot of progress. The squat's a tough one. The squat is a lot of range of motion around the hip and around the knee. A lot of times, and this is not everybody, but a lot of women, shorter torso, longer legs, they're better at deadlifting. They're not as good at squatting. Just their anthropometry and the dimensions of their body they're mechanically better at a deadlift and not as good at a squat. And I think that's probably the case for your mom too. So her squat probably is going to see a little bit more, a little slower progress. I mean, I think she'll still make progress with it. It's just going to be slower. The vest, unfortunately, you can't make jumps that are less than 1 kilogram, right? 1 kg. Ideally, you're probably looking at a half kilo jump, right? You would slow it down to a half kilo at a time. We just got to kind of work with the equipment that we have. And that's why the barbell is such a great tool. It allows for that very precise loading and those incremental increases. The challenge, honestly, for your mom, I mean, the vest is getting quite heavy.
Well, we know that because it takes two of us to put it over her head.
Right, yeah. So at some point, we'll have to figure out, well, how do we keep loading beyond just the vest? We may have to talk about a bar or, even adding weight to the vest at that point, of course. But again, I think she will continue to progress.
And you would expect those gains she's seeing in her walking to continue.
Absolutely. Yeah. I do think like everything else about this process really in life, right? You're going to see that slope start to trail off a little bit, right? She's gone from 30 seconds to 3 minutes, which is a significant increase. I would expect that progress will start to slow down. And so, that's a 6-fold increase, right? Probably won't see that over the last half of this year, right? I would assume that will start to slow down. It's still going up. It's just not going up as fast. So, again, that's just typical of anything when it comes to, the law of diminishing returns. What the upper limit is, it's hard to say for sure. I guess in my mind, I think something like a 15 or 20 minute walk where she doesn't have to use the walker would be phenomenal. And I would hope or suspect that she would be pretty happy with that. But
you would be happy with a 15, 20-minute walk without a walker, wouldn't you?
Oh, I would be delighted.
Yeah, there might be a cartwheel along the route.
Especially if I could do it with a straight back.
Right.
That's my real aim, to have a straight back.
Yeah, that would certainly be my goal. Like, get 15 minutes with good posture, not, finishing the 15 minutes, falling over. So again, I think that's possible. How long that might take is, it's kind of a difficult question to answer. So yeah, I think that's realistic. Is that the end of this year? I bet she's close. Maybe not quite there. It may take a year from now. Before that would be, realistic, but, I think it's possible. Something I'll just throw in that I would encourage you guys to do, like, I think it's great to like make her walk, no walker, unsupported, see how long she can go. But even once she starts to feel some pain, keep going.
Okay.
Even if she's starting to lose the perfect upright posture, keep going. Again, within reason. Push into that discomfort. It's just like with our weights, right? We want to challenge and stress and push a little bit into the pain, the discomfort, the thing that we can't do great yet. And so the more you push into that, I would suspect, just like our training, that will help with the process of getting a little bit better, improving endurance, and again, helping her walk upright for longer.
Okay.
They'll
keep going.
It's great. I mean, you guys the progress is just fantastic. I think one of the big things I look for is not just weight on the bar, but I'm looking for quality of movement, right? It's looking really, really good. The feedback and the corrections I give you, I tell this to lifters all the time, you're doing this stuff like 98% right. And my job is to work on the last 2%, right? So don't feel like you're doing it wrong when I'm giving feedback and cueing and corrections. I'm trying to get it as perfect as possible. But overall, the quality of your movement is great, which again is in my mind why it's extremely safe and necessary and beneficial to keep progressing and to keep adding weight and to keep pushing.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you said that because I still deal with people who just kind of mindlessly breeze into the comments and say, oh, her form is horrible. She's going to break something. You shouldn't encourage other people to do that. Sometimes I think, oh, just ignore it. But then I don't want other people to read that and think that that's a thing. So I go back every time, say they're trained by a specialist who's also a physical therapist.
We see a lot of that stuff too. Unfortunately, that's just a reality of being kind of in the fitness world. There's a lot of opinions and there's a lot of bad information out there, honestly. And so a lot of times, you've got somebody maybe doesn't have the full context of the situation or the knowledge really to understand that a deadlift at 82 is going to look different than a deadlift at 32. And, should she never deadlift? Should she never strength train? Like that's really unproductive. So it's lack of context, lack of knowledge. It's we battle that stuff all the time.
One piece of advice from you, which was magical, was the motion is the lotion.
There you
Where
go.
I was having problems with a knee, particularly
Yeah.
on the squat.
Oh yeah, doing a little
yeah.
taking a walk or riding a bike, right?
Just
Something
made a
like that.
point of, I have a climbing machine too, and I just make a point that if I haven't been very active in a day, I make sure I am active.
Yeah,
And
yeah, get on there and do a
I've
little
had
bit.
no recurrence of the knee problem at all.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
What needs to happen to change the mindset around the world so that it becomes, standard for everybody to be strength training as we age?
That is a $1 million question. Yeah, I do think that stories like this are a huge help. I think little by little, it's probably not going to be one giant event that gets everybody, aware of how important being strong is. I think little by little, you're going to see a shift. And I think it feels like it's starting.
So we spoke to Chris on Wednesday last week, and on our Thursday workout, the very next day, my mum was easily able to do her 16-kilo squat to the box that she had been struggling with so much on the Monday. So it does go to show you can have tired days that affect performance, especially when you're 82. And the key for mum and dad, as Chris said, is just to keep going and stay consistent, showing up week after week. So we will keep sharing their journey with you, and there will be updates here every couple of months. I also get asked a lot about my parents' diet, if they use supplements or any other tools. So in 2 weeks' time, I will do a video where I run through some of the other things they're using and why. And next week, I'll be talking to an expert about the head-to-toe benefits of red light. So look out for that one. And remember, if you haven't already, then do hit subscribe or follow if you're listening to the podcast so that you don't miss out on future episodes. In the description, you'll find a link to my website, honest.scot, where I share more content around how to age well and also skincare. And you can also sign up below for my free monthly newsletter where I round up all my latest content for you. And there's usually a great giveaway with each newsletter too. But for now, thank you for being here today.